All right, so let's think about division of rational numbers. So if I asked you to find 3 divided by 1/2, you can think of that as asking how many 1/2s are in 3 wholes. And so if we want to illustrate that with an area model, we could draw 3 holes and count how many 1/2s are in those holes. So I've cut those holes into halves, and if I count, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 1/2s in 3 holes, and that means that 3 divided by 1/2 is 6. We can do the same thing with if we're dividing a fraction by another fraction. So how many 1/8 are in 3/4? That's asking you what is 3/4 divided into 1/8. Well, here I only need to draw one pie and shade 3/4 of that pie. So that was, oops. Let's make it, well, okay. That was 1, 2, 3 fours, right? And then I cut those fourths into eighths. And I want to know how many 1/8s are in there, and we just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3/4 divided by 1/8 is again 6. You could also use a bar diagram to illustrate this. So make sure you're being clear what your bar represents. So here is 0, and I'm going to break it into fourths first. So here's 3/4, and I'm going to go ahead and shade my 3/4. And now I want to know how many 1/8s are in 3/4, so I need to divide this whole into eighths, and again we just count, and you can see that there are 6. Okay. All right, now what if we have an example that doesn't divide out very nicely? So let's look at doing this bar with some help from a number line. So I want to know how many 3/4 are in 7/8. So what I want to start with is 7/8, and I'm dividing it by 3/4. So this is a little different than the examples on the last slide because I'm starting with the 7/8, and it's difficult to break that into fourths, right? So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to sketch the number line here. And the first thing I'm going to do is mark 7/8, and I'm going to highlight over this just so you can see in real time what I would do. So first thing I'm going to do is I make my number line, I go from 0 to 1, and then I mark off 7/8 here. All right, so there's my 7/8. And the second thing I want to do is find 3/4. Well, 3/4 is the same as 6/8. So here is 3/4. And my number line has already been broken up into eighths. And so 3/4 has been broken into some number of equal-sized pieces. How many equal-sized pieces do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now 7/8 is that 3/4 and one more of those equal-sized pieces. Well, what fraction of 3/4 is this equal-sized piece? This piece is 1/6 of the size of 3/4. Does everyone see this? This piece here that I'm pointing at is 1/6 of 3/4. So how many 3/4 are in 7/8? Well, here is 1 3/4, and here is a 1/6 of 3/4. So in total, there are 1 and 1/6, 3/4 in 7/8. And I'm being lazy here. We should, whoops, that was bigger than I thought. We should not write our fractions slanted like that. 1 and 1/6, 3/4 in 7/8. Okay. I've got some explanation down here. That's just doing exactly what we discussed. Okay. All right. I want you to pause the video again and try an example on your own of this, and then we'll come back and finish up this section.